Hello and welcome to Blender Bitesize. In this video I'll be showing you how to make this awesome lava lamp animation. Feeling lazy? You can support this channel and skip the hard work by grabbing the blend file for this material from Gumroad for just £1. Feeling flush? Feel free to throw some of that coin my way using the Ko-fi link in the description below the video. So this is the behind the scenes look at what's happening in this scene. We've got just a small collection of lights and a single camera. We've also got the objects that go to make up the lava lamp. So we've got an emitter, the object that's being emitted, a container and a glass outer, which I kind of hid for this, but I'll show you how to make it visible later on. And then we have the controls that are actually acting on the particle system to move things around. So it's very, very simple in concept, but it does take a little bit of thinking about and some tweaking of various settings to go on. Let me just show you this in the shaded view. We've only got 3 materials here as well, so not too heavy on your graphics card. Right, let's bring that to a halt and let's move this out the way and start a new scene. So here we have a default scene. We've got the cube, the camera and the light. I'm actually going to delete the light. Then I'm going to select the camera and press Alt G and Alt R to reset the camera. And I'm going to delete the default cube as well. So we've now got a nice clean scene. Let's start by positioning the camera. Okay, so we'll rotate it on the x-axis by 90 degrees. Oops, no. Rotate x. That's because I need to select it. So we'll start by selecting the camera. Rotate by pressing R. Constrain that to the x-axis and press 90 on the keypad to rotate 90 degrees. We're then going to move it back on the y-axis 10, let's say 10 meters because we're working in meters. And that's that positioned. Now we need to add a cylinder. So I'm going to press Shift A, Mesh, and Cylinder. I'm going to go for 64 vertices. That's quite a lot, but I find it works really well. I'm going to right click and choose Shade Smooth. And then I'm going to change the Z scale to 3.75. And I think that'll fit within the camera view. So let me just check that by switching to camera view. Yep, perfect. Now this is going to be our glass container, so I'm going to call it glass. Then over in the modifiers tab, I am going to add a solidify modifier. Change the thickness to 0.005. And leave these other things set as they are for now. I'll collapse that. Then in the physics tab, I'm going to add a collision modifier. Just by clicking on that. Nothing more for me to change there just now, but I am going to switch over to wireframe mode. Just so that I can see what's going on inside. Now we need to create an emitter. So what I'm going to do is actually just duplicate the glass. Press Escape so that it doesn't move anywhere. And then scale it down by pressing S. And let's go for something like this. Now it's a little short, I want it longer, so I'm going to change the dimensions here as well. Let's say to that 3.3. That should do me. I'll press Ctrl A and then apply that scale. In the Modifiers tab, I'm going to leave Solidify, but I'm going to delete the collision. Sorry, I'm going to do that in the Physics tab. So I'll delete the collision. What I do need to add though is a particle system. So I go over to Particle System and press this plus button. And then we need to make some changes here. For the number, I'm going to set this to 20. Frame start and frame end, I'm going to put as 0, and that's because we want these all to be present all at the beginning and then stay present all the way through. My timeline is currently set to 250 frames, so for lifetime, I'm also going to put that as 240. If you change the number of frames in your animation later on, remember to come and change this as well, otherwise your particles will disappear halfway through your animation. Okay, now source we're going to put as volume. We're going to tick use modifier stack. And we're going to leave those other bits as they are. In velocity, we're going to drop that normal to 0. Then in physics, under deflection, we're going to choose size deflect. Then in render, we're going to set that as object. Now we do need to choose an object and we don't yet have it added, so we're going to press Shift A and add a metaball. And let's just move that off to the side. Reselect our emitter. In fact, while we're here, let's change that to emitter. Head back down to object, and then we can either click in here and choose metaball, or we can grab this little pipette, move it over to the object metaball and select it. Now for scale, we're going to change this to 0.4 and the scale randomness to 0.5. And you can see they've been added now. One final change here, under field weights, we're going to drop the gravity to 0. Now, if I run this animation now, not a lot's going to happen because everything's colliding and stuff's not really happening as we want. So, we're going to continue with what we were doing, and hopefully it will all come together later on. Now I'm going to select the emitter, and under Object Properties, under Viewport Display, we're going to choose Display as Bounds, because we don't really need to see the cylinder thing going on here. And then Bounds, we'll choose Cylinder. We'll tick that. Next up, choose the metaball, and we're going to alter the scale So we can either press S and then 0.8, or we can press Alt on our keyboard, click here and then drag down so we can alter them all at the same time, type 0.8 and then drop it down. Now let's go into the Metaball settings and change a few of those bits and pieces. For the resolution for the viewport, I'm going to choose 0.05 and the same for render. And you can see how that gives us much more resolution on the metaballs themselves. If you're finding this is causing lag or drag with your processor, then just increase the resolution for the viewport and maybe a bit for the render as well, because then it'll take less processing power to figure out all the different vertices. Now for the influence threshold, we're going to increase that to 0.9. Next up, we need to add the forces that are going to move our bits and pieces around. So the first one is going to be some turbulence. So we'll press Shift A, go down to Force Field and choose Turbulence. I'm going to leave it exactly where it is and exactly where it's set. Then we're going to go over to the Physics tab and under Turbulence, we're going to put the strength at 0.2, seed at 13, and everything else is staying the same. Next, we need to add some wind, so Shift A, Force Field and Wind. We're going to move this down on the Z axis by 2, so -2. And then again in the settings we expand the force fields bit. We've got our wind selected. In settings, leave it as plain, strength as 0.5 and noise amount 0, seed, let's go for 61 on this. Not entirely sure of the actual reasoning behind this. These were just the settings that I found that worked, so I'm going with that. Now for fall off, we're going to activate both minimum and maximum. We're going to set the minimum at 0.25 and the maximum as 0.5. So you can see it's added two circles here, two dashed circles, which basically indicate where the minimum distance is and the maximum distance is. So outside of this, it won't have as much strength. Now for the second wind force field, we're just going to Shift D to duplicate that one, Escape to basically unlock it from our cursor, rotate it on the y-axis 180 degrees, and then change the Z value on location to +2, so it's at the top of that tube. I'll just save that file for now. And now if I run the player, let's see what happens. We can now see that our objects actually move and they're colliding with what we need them to do and basically acting like lava lamps, which is cool, right? Now I've got quite a short animation, as I say, going on right now with 240 frames. You can of course extend this to be as long as you need it to be or want it to be. So let's stop that and go back to the start. Now let's get organized. So top wind, and don't laugh, but bottom wind. Turbulence we'll leave named as that. So we control and click those three, come over to our main screen, press M, choose new selection and call this controls. So that's moved those now into that box. Metaball glass emitter. Metaball glass emitter. Right. What's next? Okay, so we need a bit of lighting going on here as well. So we're going to start, I think, with an area light. So we'll press Shift A, light, and area. Now, under the lighting settings, we're going to change this to disk. Change it to 150 watt. Change the size to 5 meters. And then we'll move it up to the same location that we put the wind, so that's 2 meters up. We can then duplicate this, press escape to unlock it, rotate it on the y-axis 180, and then change the Z location to -2. So, bottom area, top area. I'm now going to add a couple of spotlights as well. So, Shift A, light and spot. Now we're going to chuck that up to 10 meters above the project. Change the wattage to 10,000. Change it to a bright red. Change the radius to 0.5. Spot shape to 15. We'll choose show cone as well, because then we can see what's going on. And the blend we're going to leave at 0.15. Again, we can create the second light by duplicating the first, rotate on the y-axis 180, and then bring that down to -10. So it's kind of meeting in the middle. Let's just save the file as it is. Now we need to head over to the shading tab to start shading. So I need to switch over to the Cycles Render Engine and GPU. Now what you may notice is this may change the things that are available in the lighting and various other settings, but I've shown you the actual bits that you need to change, which all are the same on both types of rendering, so we're fine. Now, so let's switch over to viewport shading, go into camera view. Now for the glass, we're going to create a new material. And here we've got options. I'm going to give you both and then you can choose. So we will either have a transparent shader or we can have a glass shader. It's entirely up to you which you use. I'm going to just turn off the overlays for a second so we can see what's happening. So transparent will basically remove it completely and just make it 100% transparent, and the glass will do its thing and basically create a glass material. You can obviously change the index of refraction to crazy levels or not crazy levels. But I'm going to leave it on transparent for now. You can of course make up your mind once you've seen the final scene. Now something I do need to do is with this cone that you're seeing with the metaballs, that's because we haven't hid the emitter itself. So I'm going to choose the emitter go over to the emitter settings, the particle settings, and I just need to find, there we go, so under render where it says show emitter, uncheck that box, and then also somewhere else, also under viewport display, show emitter, just unselect that. So we now have just the metaballs showing for now. So the next thing that we need to do is add some shading to that metaball. So we'll select it, add a new material, and let's call that lava. Actually, let's call it wax, because that's generally what's in a lava lamp. Now we'll keep the principled shader. We're going to add a layer weight node and plug the facing value into the base color. Change that value to 0.15. We're going to add a translucent BSDF, and then we're going to mix those together with a mix shader. We'll leave that at 0.5, but change the color on the translucent BSDF to a darkish red. So if we say 0.5 on the value and 1 on the saturation, that should give us what we want. Now on the principled shader, increase the metallic to 1. Roughness we can change to 0.35. And everything else we're going to leave pretty much the same, I think. Let's just save that as we are. Now one more thing to add, and that's basically a giant cube. So let's come out of camera view, mesh cube, we'll scale that 10. So it's just in here, the scale, or S10. Then we'll go back into shading with the cube selected. Yes, we've got the cube selected. New material, call it cube. And just give that a black value with total roughness. And then basically what we're seeing really is just the lava and the light that's hitting it. So if I just quickly press play by pressing spacebar, we can start to see that animate now. As you can see, the metaball, the original metaball, we've kind of kept off to one side. That won't be seen when it gets rendered. In fact, let's render region, then we won't see it. And this, like I say, will just sort of animate to the point that you've got your timeline. So let's create one of those. So we'll come down here to the corner of where these two bits join and where our cursor turns into a cross. Click and drag up. No, don't do that. And then we'll change to timeline. So to change the total length of the animation, I'm just going to go here. We can do math in there, so times 4. And don't forget, we need to go back to our emitter, to the particle settings, and change the lifetime to the total lifetime of our timeline. Now there's no, what do you call it? There's no keyframes to get involved in here because it's all controlled by the controls. Now let's continue to get organized. So bottom spot, top spot. Let's get the camera and the lights into a new collection. Let's rename this collection. So there we go, we now have all of the bits. Oh, the cube needs to come out of there. For the lava, we've got the controls and the camera and lights. And that, believe it or not, in less than half an hour, in fact probably 20 minutes if I wasn't waffling, you have got a lava lamp animation. Now when it comes to rendering it out, obviously we need to choose the output folder, and we also need to choose the video format. And if you're using MP or MPEG, definitely choose MP4. If I just render out a still image, you can see there what's happening. Now this is going to take a long time because I'm choosing 4,000 samples, but I have got away with doing the original animation at 125 samples. So, and that took around 4 to 5 seconds per frame, which if you're going to do a long animation of this, just constantly blobbing around, would be much more preferable. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this one and have got something from it. If you have, then please remember to give it a thumbs up. Of course, subscribe for future content. And in the meantime, do remember I have a full playlist of material shaders. So do go and check those out too. And in the meantime, thanks for watching.